All right, so what just happened here?
I told Regan to put his money where his mouth is. To put his mouth where his money is.
5K, I beat him.
5K?
5K.
5K, is this like Canadian?
You
Is
sure
this
about
US?
this?
Yeah.
5K, bro.
5K.
It's on. It's on, bro.
5K what though? Like Dogecoin or US dollars or
Whatever he wants.
Or Zimbabwe?
US dollars.
US dollars?
5K US dollars. You heard it here first.
Oh.
This is Regan's idea. Don't back out now. I like this.
What's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, the latest update from Samson Dauda. At 8 weeks out now from the 2023 Mr. Olympia, where he says in this update that he's weighing well over 300 pounds. We know that towards the peak of his offseason, he was weighing 330. I'm assuming he's probably come down significantly from 330 now that we're getting closer to the Olympia. But still, the fact that he's over 300 pounds and he's looking like this is very impressive to me. I would say of all the updates that we see from these guys, the two guys that we haven't seen compete the most recently that impress me the most are Samson Dauda and Derek Lunsford. Samson for his sheer size and the physique that he maintains at that size. For example, his midsection, the deep separation in his legs, very impressive physique overall for a guy that weighs 300 plus pounds. And Derek Lunsford, the other guy that really impresses me, especially with the updates that we saw recently of his back. That was one of those updates that really made me go, wow, this guy, he's bringing it to the Olympia this year, and he's going to be very hard to beat in those back shots, if anybody can beat him in those back shots. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think he has the best back on that Olympia stage. And I think one of the closest battles on the Olympia stage, even though we didn't get to see them go head-to-head at the Arnold Classic, which Samson won, is going to be Derek and Samson. I think they've got two very different physiques, but they both have very, very strong physiques that I think are going to be very comparable at the Olympia. And I'm kind of wondering at this point, too, what's going on with Big Ramy. We haven't seen anything from Ramy, really at all. Nothing about his physique. I don't even think we've seen training videos from Ramy. I don't know if Ramy's going to do the Olympia. The same could be said about Brandon Curry. I've heard that he's doing it, but we haven't seen anything from him as well, other than that post from his coach Abdullah a little while ago. But right now, I think the conversation at the Olympia, excluding those two guys, because we don't really know if they're doing it, is going to be Hottie, Derek, Nick, and Samson. And Andrew Jack, too. I want to add him in that conversation. But we did just see him compete. I think those are the main guys that people are looking at right now for the conversation of those top spots. And I have a feeling Samson is going to crack that top 3 this year. Now, next up in the news, I think this is a very big one. Iain Valliere announces his retirement from professional bodybuilding at the age of 33, shortly after winning the Toronto Pro earlier this season. So I think this is a significant announcement. I think, for one, obviously he's very young. He just qualified for the Olympia, so he's still towards the top of the bodybuilding ranks, and it looks like he's not going to be doing the Olympia, even though he qualified in Toronto. And I know that after Toronto, that was kind of considered a controversial decision by a lot of the fans. It's where he beat Hassan Mustafa. A lot of people felt like Hassan should have won. I know that Iain got a lot of backlash for that, and I know that there was the issue with Iain's chest that a lot of people were pointing out in Toronto. And I know that's been something that Iain has dealt with for a lot of his competitive career. He's kind of got a love-hate relationship from the fans. But it certainly seems like now he's got a lot of support in this retirement decision. I think it's a good decision on his part. He's won a lot of shows. He's been top 7 at the Olympia. Realistically, I think he's facing an upcoming group of guys that I don't think, and this is no disrespect, I don't think he's going to crack into that conversation against guys like Samson, Derek, Hottie, Nick, Andrew Jack. I think Iain is still on the outside of that. So I think from the outside looking in, he gets to retire while he's on top. He just won a show. He's retiring off an Olympia qualification. He also gets to retire with his health, which I think is the most important thing. He's young. He's still healthy. He hasn't had any major health issues that we know about. There's not an injury that we know of that is causing him to make this decision. This is of his own volition. So I think that's the biggest thing. And honestly, I think he achieved a lot while he was a pro. And I think this was probably the right time for him. And he's going to pursue other things with business and with his family. And realistically, whatever business route he chooses to go is probably more lucrative than being a professional bodybuilder. He's already made a name for himself in bodybuilding, and that's really the hardest part. So he's already done that. and now it's time to transition that into business. And I think what makes it even more interesting is that this comes on the heels of yesterday's video. We just talked about this post that Chris Bumstead, obviously Chris is Ian's brother-in-law, but Chris just put up this long post about, you know, the struggles that he's had with his prep, the mental struggles, the physical struggles, and struggling with the idea of quitting and thinking about retirement and when the right time to make that decision is going to be. And the fact that Iain made this announcement so close to that post of Chris, I think that Chris probably knew that this was the direction that Iain was going. And it had Chris contemplating his own competitive career and when the right time might be for him to step away. And I have an even stronger feeling now that after the Olympia this year, if Chris wins, he gets that 5th title, I feel like there's a possibility he could step away after that. And Chris is kind of in a different element than Iain is. He's on kind of a different playing field because Chris is like through the stratosphere of social media popularity. 18, almost 20 million followers now just on Instagram alone. One of the most followed bodybuilders or fitness influencers of all time. He's already a part owner of a successful supplement brand. I would imagine his sponsorship deals right now are insanely lucrative. The prize money for Classic Physique only being $50,000. Chris really doesn't need to compete. Now, Iain, if Iain continued to compete, if he were able to win the Olympia someday, that $400,000 check is big to an open bodybuilder. It would probably even be big to Chris Bumstead, who like I said, I would estimate probably makes $100,000 a month at least. But Chris's incentive to compete is even less than Iain's, and Chris's opportunities outside of competing are even greater than Iain. And on top of that, while Iain didn't have to leave because of a health issue, Chris has had health issues in the past, so health is a concern for him. He has had injuries in the past. He's had muscle tears. So he's got to be looking at this decision by Iain and thinking about all these factors that he has that could contribute to him potentially retiring. And it's got to be pushing him more in that direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if sometime after the Olympia this year, we saw a similar announcement from Chris Bumstead himself. And maybe whatever Iain and Chris both decide to pursue after competing, they pursue together. But whatever they decide to do, I wish the best for both of them. Especially Iain. I hope that everything he wants from this retirement is what he gets. I hope it's as fulfilling and successful and as lucrative as he hopes that it's going to be. Now, next up in the news, you guys saw the clip that I introed this video with. Blesing versus Regan, two of the big names that we've been talking about here for the Italy show this weekend, the Flex Pro weekend. Two of the main guys that people are talking about for a potential victory here. They met up in Italy and have now bet each other on who will place higher. Not necessarily who will win, but who will beat the other. And that doesn't mean one of them has to win. So Blesing and Regan now have a $5,000 wager on Blesing beating Regan or vice versa. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to place higher? Not necessarily who do you think is going to win, but out of everything that you've seen from Blesing, out of everything that you've seen from Regan, who do you think is going to place higher at this competition in Italy? I think Blesing looks like he's in really good condition, arguably really one of the best versions of Blesing I think I've seen as far as prep photos go. And I think the issue with Regan, even though I think he looks like he's close to his all-time best as well, I think it's going to come down to conditioning. So the question for me is whether Regan is in sharp enough conditioning to beat Blesing. Because a lot of people like to knock Blesing's lower body, and yes, okay, I agree to an extent. But you got to keep in mind, Blesing did win the New York Pro, which is the third biggest title in bodybuilding. Even though the lineup wasn't super deep, he's won big shows with the legs that he has. So when he's in shape, he is capable of winning shows despite whatever imbalance we perceive to be there. If Blesing comes in peeled, he can win a show like this. And I think realistically, Blesing and Regan are on a similar playing field because the last time we saw them both at the Olympia, or both of their last Olympia appearances rather, they were both at the very bottom of the placings. I think one of them will really excel here and one of them won't. Now, next up in the news, I wanted to give you guys the finalized competitor list for the Flex Weekend Pro. It has been updated to reflect all of the names that we've been talking about just to give you guys final confirmation that they will be there. So the final list: Khaled Al-Kazem, Ali Jalil Nasser Al-Zaraki, Blesing Awodabu, Giovanni Azpatia, Simone Bassinelli, Andrea Balzani, Tim Budashim, Mike Ciesla, Nathan Diasha now added to that list, Roman Fritz, Regan Grimes, Theo Laguerre, Mikhail Maslov, Andrea Musi now added to that list, Artem Pakniuk, Dennis Reinhold, Bruno Oliveira, Santos, Tomas Tabasiar, Jan Turek, Liang Yang, and Zhu Sheng Yan. So we now have a show with over 20 competitors, many of them being competitors that have won shows recently. Many of them that have qualified for the Olympia recently. I really believe this will be one of the most entertaining shows that we've seen in a very, very long time. I think it's going to be highly competitive. I think it's going to be very enjoyable. And I think whatever that first call out is, whoever's in that top 5, maybe top 4, I think you're going to see some very different physiques with some very different strengths, very different weaknesses. And I think it's going to be a very tight top 4 or 5, highly competitive, good conditioning, elite level guys. So that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. Let me know in the comments below your predictions for this weekend's Flex Pro Weekend and about all the stories that you heard in this video. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.